Alright, just finished up a nice ride here on probably one of our final t-shirt days in the area. Wanted to come out with a PSA video just to clear up any negativity around Beastboard before I go out with my first impressions video. So I've shot that video already. Hopefully you'll watch this one first and we can put all that aside and just look at the board as it is, albeit not exactly as Beastboard intended for it to be. However, let's get into it. So I've been around for a little while now, so for anyone who's watched my videos, it's not really my thing to create hit pieces or spread negativity about companies. This is purely a one-off, I hope, because electric skateboarding and making videos about e-skate is completely the opposite to me. It's about enjoying my spare time, having a hobby, and, you know, getting all the stress and negativity out. So hopefully this is just a one-off. So the beauty of the size of my channel, I have no gag orders. So, you know, there's no conflict of interest. I don't mind speaking the truth, what my truth is, what I feel about a company. I buy Beastboards, for example, because they're affordable and they're good bang for the buck. As with any customer who buys multiple boards from a company, I do receive a small discount on my purchases because I've asked for that, and I'd advise you to do the same if you plan on buying more than one board from the same company. And keep in mind, anything I do say in this video, I do have receipts. I'm not going to post screenshots and make a big deal. If it gets to that point, I do have receipts and I can post that if I need to. So to catch you up, if you haven't seen the previous videos on this board, hopefully you have. Check those out if you haven't. Got 3 issues with this most recent direct drive Beastboard Mini that I've got. So these issues are bubbling on the grip tape in multiple places, and there's a fairly large gap between the battery enclosure and the deck itself. The big one, there's no risers on the board and no screws. So that's the issue that I'm going to go over. The wheel bite issue. The other stuff, you know, it is what it is. So to talk about the wheel bite issue, I can show some videos on the screen now. It makes the board completely unrideable with the 110 Win wheels on there. So in turn, this board is completely unrideable out of the box. The issue highlights the fact this is a generic deck that they've used for this board, and the cutouts have no place being where they are on the board. They serve no purpose if you look at where those wheels and trucks cut in onto the deck. So I contacted Beastboard immediately about this problem. I didn't get a reply until the next day. When I did get a reply, it didn't really seem like the issue was alarming to them or a big deal. And they suggested that I add an 8mm riser on each truck to see if that fixes the issue. So I didn't think 8mm would fix the issue at all. I ordered 10 3mm risers off Amazon, and luckily they came in 12 hours. The other issue I had to fix was the fact that with these risers, the board, well, the screws on the board were not going to fit the risers. They were in fact too short. So I also had to go down to Home Depot and get 8 new screws to fit these risers, and they were the longest screws that they had in stock, and they don't actually stock a longer version of this screw. So keep that in mind if you are, you know, doing any DIY or something. You probably have to order from a specialist place. So I just want to clarify that point. The screws that were included on the deck were the same screws that were included on the Beastboard Viper. So if you don't know, I own that board as well, and I can verify they're exactly the same screws. They've also got a different head than what's on the Beastboard Mini hub drive board. So that's a Phillip head on that board, which has quite a significant riser. So those screws are longer than the ones I could get at Home Depot, and they have quite a significant riser installed out of the box on that deck. The fact is, it wasn't a simple mistake that they forgot to put the riser on the deck. They also put the wrong screws on the deck. So I'll also note that, and I'll show pictures of the screenshots of what's advertised on Beastboard's website, and you can clearly see I got the screws that were advertised on each board. So you can see there's silver Phillips head screws on the hub version, and there's the Allen key type screws on the direct drive version, which are darker in color, and they're exactly the same as what's on the Viper. So now I've swapped, I've added 12mm of risers on each each truck. So there was a riser on each truck out of the box, which is the same again as the Beastboard Viper. It's only a tiny little 5mm riser. So 17 millimeters in total I've got that board up. And as I said, with the screws that I can get access to, that's the maximum it would go. So I've got an extra riser for each side if I had screws big enough to add those, but there's no way that I could get the nut on at the end. So I can show, even with those risers on, remember Beastboard told me to add 8mm at the start, and I've gone and added 12mm, there's still significant wheel bite. So what I've done is gone and added the cloud wheels because they're 5mm smaller. So at this point I've showed Beastboard that it still doesn't work, and now they've come back and said that should have included a riser and screws the same as the hub version. So the story's changed along the way. As I said, I do have receipts. If you don't believe me, you want to see that. So at this point, Beastboard said that they will send me new risers, the same as the hub version, and new screws. They sent me a picture of the screws, which happened to be exactly the same as the hub version, not the ones that are pictured on their website. I did mention to Beastboard, I still don't think this will fix the issue, but I'm happy to try it out because the cutouts aren't in the right place on the board. So I had to explain to them, not only are the wheels bigger than the hub version, which they quote as, working, not having wheel bite, as I understand, but it doesn't mean because it works on that, it will work on this board, because the bigger wheels, being 5mm bigger, plus the trucks are wider, and they're double kingpin as opposed to the traditional kingpin, so they have 2 points of articulation and they cut in even further on that deck. So we are at Friday now, so 8 days after I received the board. To my knowledge, Beastboard still hasn't sent those parts. They have said they would, then they said they wouldn't. I'll get into that. And they are refusing to refund me a mere $25 that I've had to spend on risers and the screws, because they told me that they didn't tell me to do that. From my impressions, they did, because as I said, they told me to add 8mm risers, which I don't know where they would have expected me to get those from anyway. So Beastboard is holding those new parts to ransom, seemingly. They're saying, well, we can either refund you the money that you spent to purchase those new parts, or we can send you the other parts. However, now that they're saying those parts should have been included on the board, I've already paid for them, so they should be sending me those parts anyway. And for wasting my time, I think the $25 is not a whole lot to ask. Also, I think another point which I've raised with them is I should receive the cost of my air shipping back. So the fact is, I'm not going to get those new parts if they have sent them for another 3 weeks minimum in Canada, which is the difference between air shipping and sea shipping. Since it was their mistake, I do think they should refund me the air shipping, because it's their mistake, not mine. I'm not sure why they should expect me to wear that. The whole point of me spending money on air shipping was to receive the board and get out and test it before it's winter here, which is coming very quickly. And on that point, I honestly don't care about the money in the scheme of things. It's the principle of the fact that I'm not quoting them for the time that I spent going out and getting those parts and researching what risers to do and spending time changing those things over. It's a board that's meant to work out of the box. It's not a DIY board. If I choose to do things after I've purchased it and reviewed it as it is out of the box, that's my choice. I own the board, but you sent me a product that's $8.99 that doesn't work out of the box. And if I did try and use that at any sort of speed, it would kill me. It would throw me off with that wheel bite. So no acknowledgement of their mistakes, blame game, making customers feel like they made a mistake or did something wrong, and a whole lot of smoke and mirrors. All too often you hear about Chinese board companies giving customers the runaround, which in turn gives all these Chinese companies a bad reputation. It gives place for brands like Evolve to come into the market and still sell China boards, with their point of difference being customer service. And from all I've heard from Evolve anywhere in the world, their customer service is really good and their turnaround time is good too. Yes, you do pay a premium for it, but it's why people are willing to pay a premium. And you compare it to any other electronics company like Apple or Microsoft, that's kind of how you get to be a big business and stay in the game so long. Now, how did we get to this point? Well, I think this board was a rush mistake. So if you recall, Beast Board had their four-wheel drive Phantom board, which was a direct drive motor. I think they misjudged the market potentially, ordered too many of those decks, batteries and the direct drive motors. The Phantom four-wheel drive was only 2 of the Viper battery for a start, so from the start there really wasn't any commitment there. The decks have been repurposed into the Aurora lineup and now the Viper lineup. So they've repurposed those decks into their older models, and the four-wheel drive version has disappeared, and they're now offering this mini direct drive version, which they already had the decks for the hub version, and then they're offering a Phantom two-wheel drive version, which is obviously using the same deck as the Aurora and Viper 2. So I think these boards are more of a Frankenstein board that hasn't been built from the ground up. Rather, they've repurposed those parts, and they're trying to sell them off in other ways that might sell. That's just my, impression. I could be completely wrong, but I didn't see one person with that Phantom four-wheel drive board because it was about $2,000, and I don't think anyone saw the value there. Well, I feel better getting that all off my chest, and I think I can move on. I've done my service to the community and passed on my experience. Take it, as you will. It's my experience. I'm not saying that's, the experience everyone else is going to get with the Beast board. I've had 2 previous to this, and I've got no complaints about the quality. No, it's not Evolve quality, but it's not Evolve prices either. So in its current state, with the cloud wheels on, I completely love this board, so much so it's actually my favourite board I've ever had. So that's why it's so disappointing to me, because it could have been such a good experience out of the box. So I'm happy to share a positive experience with you on my first impressions video and completely move on past these issues, hopefully. But the most important point is this is not the board that Beast Board sold me. So I've invested money in it, and I've got to make my videos before the bad weather comes. So hopefully you can still enjoy those knowing they're not the complete product. I do have separate videos riding the wind wheels, and I've got a separate video on the wind wheels comparing them to the clouds if you want to have a look at that as well if you were considering this board. So I won't be buying another Beast board, unfortunately, not for a while anyway, and I would advise the community not to buy one either. The community in Eastgate is pretty small. Hopefully, as the sport gets a bit bigger, people, manage to keep that tight community, and these bad experiences seem to spread like wildfire. I hope that keeps coming and we can get rid of the bad apples, or force companies to increase their customer service side of the game, because it certainly doesn't cover all Chinese board manufacturers, but it is a way that they can cut costs and save a lot of money, is by selling the board and you're done after they've got your money. But it doesn't result in customers repurchasing products, and I think all of those manufacturers who do that will learn that in the long run. So thank you for listening to me rant. Hopefully we can get back to the positive videos, and I'll do a full review and a range test on this board. As I said, I love it. As always, if you found the video helpful, please give me a like, it helps me out. Drop any comments, suggestions, anything like that below. Give me any feedback. If you think I'm completely wrong, I want to hear it, sure thing. And if you could subscribe if you haven't already, please give us a subscribe. That will really help me out. Cheers.